How to socialise without alcohol. You absolutely can do this. I'm going to run through some key points for you. So the first thing to say is alcohol is one of our favourite drugs, and actually one of the things we can say about alcohol is it is a social lubricant. So when we think about drugs and we think about appropriate use of the drug, to have a drink in a social setting is appropriate use of the drug, yeah? It just becomes a problem if we drink too much and it doesn't work for us, yeah? So if you're considering reducing your drinking, having alcohol-free days, taking a break, you're probably thinking about, oh my God, but what about socializing without alcohol? And there are a few things to consider, yeah? So when we first make changes to our drinking, we can feel odd, we can feel different. And if particularly we are socializing in the same way with the same people in the same places, nothing's changed, yeah, you're still going to the pub on a Friday night with all your friends, stuff like that, that is gonna feel odd, it's gonna feel different, it's gonna be uncomfortable for a lot of people. Not everyone. I know people that just do it and they love it and they're fine. Your body, your choice, right? But for some people, if they've historically used alcohol, the nation's favourite drug, as a social lubricant, and then they're making changes to their drinking and they're feeling better and they're feeling really good about it, but they still want to socialise with friends and family, and I highly recommend you do. I don't want you to stop socialising. I definitely don't want that. Then it can feel really odd, unfamiliar, yeah, because you're not using the social lubricant. Now, you won't always feel like that. Let's run through some bits, okay? The first thing to say is the bit to consider that's really important is about risk. Now, if you are somebody that is reducing their drinking, being alcohol free, because alcohol has been very dangerous for you, and what I mean by that is significant physical health problems, significant mental health problems. You know, you drink too much, you put yourself at risk. You know, liver problems, heart problems, diabetes, dementia, cancers, things that are really, really dangerous, you know, can potentially be fatal for you. We need to take that into consideration when we're considering, particularly the early days, how we're going to socialize. So for instance, alcohol was very dangerous for me. I got myself into a situation where I was putting myself and others at risk, and that wasn't okay. And I decided to be alcohol free. Best decision I ever made. I decided to 99% of the time stay away from alcohol centric environments. So the pub, the party, the club, stuff like that. I did that because I knew that if I put myself in the sweetie shop, I was going to eat the sweeties. I knew that. I just knew what I was like. And I wanted to cut myself some slack while I was making changes. But what I didn't do was isolate. I socialized in a different way. I did things differently. I did some training. I went to the gym. I did gym classes. I did yoga classes. I went for walks with people. I did spa days. I did partner dancing. So my life was full with lots and lots of different social connections, but it wasn't in alcohol centric environments, yeah? Now, obviously over time I did go to parties and birthday celebrations and pubs and places like that. But when I was ready to do that, this is very much a personal choice. I work with lots and lots of different women, thousands of women, and everybody's different. In fact, one of the women in our accountability group, she's been alcohol free for a long time. Going to the pub with her husband and her friends was a huge part of her life, and she didn't want to change that, but she wanted to be alcohol free. Now, she managed to make that work for her. She would go late, she would leave early, you know, go to a gym class, have an activity, all sorts of things to make it work for her. So it wasn't an issue. So there is no one size fits all, yeah? Please don't panic and think, oh my God, I can't go to the pub ever again. Oh my God, I've got to completely change my friendship group. For some of you maybe, but not for all of you, yeah? Oh my God, I've got to leave my husband or my partner. That's a really common one. Not necessarily. So risk, I would say, you know, if it's really, it could be risky for you to have a drink, then in those early days, how can you make it easier on yourself? And that might mean staying away from alcohol as much as possible, but socializing differently, because we still need to connect. Do not isolate, okay? That's really, really important, okay? So the risk is the consideration, and not isolating, and socializing differently. So if you are somebody that does want to just stay away from alcohol-centric environments, it's thinking about how you can interact with people, not necessarily people you know well, maybe new people, in a different way. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but there are people everywhere, literally everywhere. And it can feel a bit daunting, but things like an evening class or volunteering or a gym class, it's a really, really easy way to meet other people. And sometimes one of the best things you can do when you're reducing your drinking, being alcohol free, is doing something different, you know, picking something like an evening class, learning a new language, picking up a new sport, and then just being consistent and doing that repeatedly. It can be really difficult in the beginning, but if you're consistent over time, people recognize you, start smiling, you know, having little chats, you know, going for coffee with people. It takes time, but there's a lot of people out there, and a lot of people want to meet you and be friends. It doesn't happen overnight, but lots and lots of the women we work with go out and they try lots of different activities, and through that make lots and lots of new friends, which is really exciting. Yeah, so socializing differently. Another thing about this that can help is turning your day on its head. So maybe historically you've socialized in the evenings, you know, could you socialize during the day? You know, is it breakfast meetings, coffee meetings, going for a walk in the morning, meeting for a yoga class in the morning, booking spa days with your friends? So it's how you sort of turn things on its head that can really help you as well. It's looking at the habit around alcohol and socializing. So if you go to the pub on a Friday night and you meet a group of friends and you always drink alcohol and that's what you do, and you don't want to do that for a little while, you want to give yourself a bit of a break, it's thinking about how can I make my Friday different. It's not just that moment in time. It might be about, you know, where does that start in the daytime on Friday? For instance, I mean, I'm self-employed so I can do this, but I keep Fridays mostly so that I can choose what I want to do on a Friday. So it's my time. That doesn't mean I'm not doing work. Maybe I'm doing a little bit of work, but it's, you know, it's a day where I get to choose. So that Friday feeling starts for me in the morning. I'm not waiting till I finish work on a Friday and then, you know, it's that common trigger like end of the week, end of work, stuff like that. It's how you can start changing your habits earlier on. Yeah. So risk, don't isolate, socialize differently. And there are a million and one different ways you can socialize differently. If you've got no idea, please comment under this video and I will give you plenty of ideas. One of the really interesting things to think about is, what did you enjoy doing as a child, and then go do that. That can be interesting. Now, when you are ready, that might be immediately, it might not be, to say meet some friends in a pub or a club, you know, or go to a party or an event or something like that. It's about practice. Yeah, so it's going back to that, remembering that alcohol is a social lubricant, and if you've been using that for a long time, that's like a comfortable slipper, and you've taken the comfortable slipper off and it is going to feel uncomfortable and unfamiliar. But with any new habit like learning to drive or going to a new gym or starting a new class or a new job or, you know, a new phone or a new piece of software, it's clunky, it feels uncomfortable, it feels unfamiliar. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. Yeah, so this is about practice. I can remember when I first did this, I felt really, really odd. I found it really hard to talk to people. I thought I stuck out like a sore thumb. Obviously I didn't, and nobody was paying attention to me. But it took me a long time to figure out how to actually interact with people without the aid of alcohol. So, I mean, I was getting out and about and doing stuff, but I wasn't saying a lot, which is obviously really difficult for people. But I just kept showing up and kept practicing and noticing. And after a while, I noticed that I was feeling odd and different, and actually that was impacting on how people reacted to me. So the next step for me was to make an effort and actually interact with people. Simple, isn't it? So part of what I did was I would find somebody that maybe was on their own or looked like they could do with a chat. So if I was at a work event or a networking event or a party or, you know, a bar, anything like that, I would find someone that looked like they could do with a chat, you know, maybe they're on their own, stuff like that. And I would go over and go, oh, hi, how are you? You know, maybe introduce myself. And then I would listen, like truly listen. So I don't know if you've noticed, but when we're drinking or when you watch people that are drinking, it can get quite loud, quite loose. I mean, it can be a lot of fun for sure, but I know it feels like you're connecting, but it's not a true connection. It's not a good quality sort of communication or listening. And if you're somewhere and you're one of the few people that isn't drinking and you are listening to someone, that probably feels quite nice for that other person. So I always think of it as like, okay, I feel uncomfortable and I'm going to go and talk to someone and I'm going to listen to them, because when you listen to someone else, you get outside of your own head and you start to feel better because you're focusing on them, if you're truly listening to them. But it's also a wonderful thing for them to experience, because how often do you get to have an interaction with someone where somebody is truly listening to you? Now, once I started to do that, it was really interesting, and I met some really interesting people and found that people were more than happy to talk to me. So people love to talk about themselves. So if you're out and about somewhere, it's using that understanding, that skill, and just getting somebody talking, because then you don't have to talk and you can sit and listen, and that feels lovely to them. You get to relax and breathe into it, and you know, you're 30 minutes into the conversation and the listening, and you're just like, you've forgotten about why you're nervous or uncomfortable or things like that. You're so focused on the other person. Yeah. One of the other things I used to do was play a game with myself to force myself to go and talk to people. So, you know, if I was at a networking event or a party where I didn't know people, I'd be like, okay, I need to go and introduce myself or meet 5 people that I haven't met before and just find out a little bit about them. And that would force me to like just go and say, hi, right, I've done 3, I need to go and do another one. The other one that I used to do at parties was go and find the other alcohol-free people, because there are alcohol-free people in these places. You don't necessarily need to know them. I did that once on a night out in London, and we found 5 people who weren't drinking, and it was brilliant. We had such a laugh. It was really good fun. The other bit I want you to remember, so people get really caught up with this about socializing without alcohol. They get in their head, they make it big, they make it into something that it isn't. It starts to build up into this mountain that becomes insurmountable. But actually, when we support people to do this in the accountability group, you know, handhold them, force them a little bit, encourage them, give them some tools, they actually have a really nice time. And they're really surprised. So remember that this quite often isn't our friend, and we build things up into things that just aren't real. You know, we create stories around it. We make things bigger. We worry about them. Yeah. So with that in mind, I want to remind you that you probably interact with people a lot throughout your day, your week, your month, without the aid of alcohol, whether you're drinking or not. So whether that's at the school gate or with your family or with your partner at home or at work or your friends or at the gym, there are periods of time and probably big chunks of your day where you're not drinking and interacting with other humans. So what happens is when people start socializing without alcohol, they make it into this big thing of like, oh my God, I've never socialized without alcohol, forgetting that actually you probably spend, you know, a good proportion of your day interacting with people without the aid of alcohol. So you absolutely can do it. Yeah. Any questions, please ask and share your top tips under this video.